All right, so I want to welcome you to your actual first video lecture for macroeconomics. Again, I introduce myself as Christopher Francis, your lecturer for this course, and I just implore you to stay focused throughout this entire video. Pause it when you need to, jot down notes when you need to, and just enjoy the entire session. So what we're looking at here is our first lecture, part A of the first lecture, where we'll be focusing on the measurement of macroeconomic variables. So the objectives of this lecture would be that after the lecture, students will be able to define what economics is, distinguish between micro and macroeconomics, define what are macroeconomic indicators, provide examples of macroeconomic indicators, and define GDP, GNP, and national income. The chapter that this particular lecture is based upon will be chapter 1 of the text for this course, and the title of this chapter is Introduction. So let's begin with this question of what is economics? Traditionally, what we would see is that economics is usually defined as a study or a science or a discipline, all right, that seeks to investigate how societies as a whole utilize the resources that they have, which are scarce, in a bid to satisfy the wants and needs that exist in society, which are unlimited. So what you would see in every society, there is a crucial balancing act taking place. That balancing act is simply to put on one side of the seesaw our wants and needs, which are relatively unlimited, and on the other side of the seesaw, what you have are the resources which are actually scarce. So economics as a discipline seeks to understand how we as individuals in a society use these scarce resources in our bid to satisfy our unlimited wants and our needs. So in addition to that generic definition of economics, I seek to also include a definition or a statement made by Arthur Lewis, who says that economics must begin with a concern for the conditions under which people live. Now, this is very, very important. We have heard of individuals in the field of economics or who have actually used economics as a tool for their betterment, but their activities were more fraudulent in nature. We know about Alan Stanford, who ran more or less a Ponzi scheme similar to Madoff. And these individuals are now imprisoned because they used the skills that they had to more or less run schemes that benefited them. So the economics worked for them. But ultimately, individuals who caught up in their schemes, individuals who invested their life savings, ultimately lost out on it. So not because it worked well for Stanford or Madoff, that it meant that this was good economics. Good economics begins with a concern for the conditions under which people live. It therefore means that as we go about making our decisions in society, our decisions should be made within the framework of ensuring that what we do does not negatively impact upon individuals around us in society. Now, economics in itself can be broken apart into two major branches, what is known as microeconomics and also what is known as macroeconomics. Microeconomics seeks to understand or investigate the issues that affect the individuals within society, or what we know as the economic agents, and macroeconomics focuses on issues that affect the economy as a whole. So there are issues that may take place in a country that may affect simply one individual or one group of individuals, but there are issues that can affect a whole, in fact, all of the individuals within society. To just break it down a bit, what I'm saying is that in every society, there are different groups of people. There are people who supply their skills and their labor to firms. There are people who utilize their skills as entrepreneurs to make a profit for themselves. And there are people who operate in a capacity to really push the nation or the country forward. What I'm speaking about, or the different groups I'm speaking about, are what we term as economic agents. And economic agents are individuals in a society that engage in economic activities. And economic activities can be termed broadly as simply activities that pertain to production, distribution, and consumption. And we can all attest that we all engage in at least one of these activities. Everyone in society consumes, okay? Not everyone in society produces, but everyone consumes something, some good or service. those who produce will be regarded as firms, as entrepreneurs. And then, the different entrepreneurs will engage also in acts of distribution as we seek to get goods from one position to another. So everybody that engages in economic activities will be termed as economic agents, but we all don't engage in the same types of activities, so we can classify ourselves within groups. So in every society, you would have households. Households are individuals who supply their labor to the other economic agent known as the firm. The firm are those individuals who have that capacity and tenacity and willingness to risk certain things to engage in business endeavors. So the firms need the labor services of the households in order for them to engage in business enterprise and make a profit. And then there's the government, which is another economic agent. The government seeks to provide judicial services, public goods, and moderate the economy overall for everyone within society. So we have households, we have firms, and we have the government, which are three basic economic agents in every economy. And of course, we all know about globalization and the fact that we all import and export. And that takes into consideration the fourth economic agent known as the foreign sector. This pertains to activities such as importing and exporting. So what I'm saying is that when we look at the issues that affect only households, issues such as consumer behavior or the preferences of consumers, or we could investigate how firms go about making decisions to make a profit in their business. That's just focusing on one particular group of the economic agents, possibly firms, or we could focus on the household. But issues affecting households may not necessarily affect the individuals who are classified as firms. Likewise, issues affecting the firms about how profits are maximized, they're not really going to affect or impact upon the household. Excuse me. So therefore, when we analyze these issues, we're looking at economics from a microeconomic perspective. We are zoning in on one particular economic agent. But there are actually issues that can affect everyone in society, whether you're a household, whether you're a firm, whether you're the government. Issues such as inflation. Inflation is a situation where the general price level in society has risen. So it means food prices would rise, traveling costs would rise, entertainment costs would rise. Inflation is something that affects everyone in society, not just households, firms, or the government. So therefore, macroeconomics seeks to investigate and understand economic phenomena that will impact everyone in society. And therefore, the goal in macroeconomics is not just to understand, but in understanding, seek to come up with solutions to mitigate the negative impacts of these economic phenomena, and also to find ways to improve and have positive impacts overall within a society. So ultimately, economics overall, whether it's micro or macro, the long-term goal is to use resources in a very effective and efficient way, whereby we ultimately will allocate resources in a manner that will benefit everyone in society. Now, with regards to macroeconomics, in macroeconomics, as I said, investigations will focus upon issues that affect everyone in society. So these issues can be termed as economic phenomena. Now, the different issues or the different economic phenomena that are analyzed at a macro level can be termed as macroeconomic variables. So issues such as inflation, unemployment, gross domestic product, gross national product, all of these are what you can term as macroeconomic variables. Variables simply because the value of inflation in this year could be 10%. Next year it could be 15%. The third year it could be 20%. You realize that the values of inflation, they're increasing, they're changing. So inflation is a term or a variable whose value can change. Okay? So therefore, given that inflation is a variable and it's a variable that assesses a macroeconomic issue, we can term it a macroeconomic variable. Now, all macroeconomic variables provide us with some degree of information, and based upon the information, it can provide a signal or send to policymakers a signal rather that tells them what is happening within the economy. And therefore, all macroeconomic variables can also be termed as macroeconomic indicators. These macroeconomic indicators, it tells policymakers or anyone that can understand them and interpret them what direction the country or the economy is heading in. If the values of inflation are persistently rising, it means that things are deteriorating within the economy because the purchasing power of the economic agents will continue to decrease as long as inflation rises. So rising inflation rates sends a signal that the economy is deteriorating such that purchasing power is decreasing of our economic agents. Okay? Economic growth, if GDP per capita is rising, it sends a signal that the general affluence of individuals within society is increasing. So we see here macroeconomic variables can be macroeconomic indicators because it sends information, it sends a signal as to what direction, whether good or bad, that the economy is heading in. Now let's begin to discuss gross domestic product, gross national product, net domestic product, net national product, and national income. With regards to gross domestic product refers to the total value of all goods and services that are produced within the physical and maritime borders of a country. It is usually measured in a period of approximately 1 year. And when we speak about gross domestic product, this calculation, this term, it does not make any allowances for depreciation. Okay, and I'm going to discuss that issue after about depreciation. So gross domestic product is the total value of all goods and services produced within the physical and maritime borders of a country, observed in approximately a period of 1 year, and no allowances are made for depreciation. Now, when we speak about gross domestic product, it means whatever firms are operating physically within a country, whether the firm is a local firm or a foreign firm, the value of output of those firms will be taken into consideration when calculating gross domestic product. I repeat, it doesn't matter whether the firm is a locally owned firm or a foreign owned firm. As long as they are operating within the physical and maritime borders of a country, then the value of output of those firms will be included in that country's gross domestic product. Gross national product is a little bit different. Gross national product refers to the total value of all goods and services produced by the nationals of a country measured within a period of approximately 1 year or so, and again, no allowances for depreciation are made. So with gross national product, what we see is regardless of whether an individual is located within their country or not, the output that they produce will be added together when consulting or constructing gross national product. So to be more specific, if we take into consideration the gross national product of Trinidad and Tobago, it means we'll be tallying the value of output of TNT nationals, whether they are physically located in Trinidad and Tobago or whether they are physically located abroad. So if a Trinidad-based individual is operating in America or in some other Caribbean island, the value of their firm's output, the value of their contribution, whatever output that they produce in these countries, will be tabulated and included in the gross national product for Trinidad and Tobago. Now, in each of the definitions, gross domestic product and gross national product, I said that no allowances are made for depreciation. What in fact is depreciation? Well, the fact is, in every country, there are certain assets that need to be maintained and in some situations, rebuilt. For instance, roads. A country may have 10 roads, but over time these roads may deteriorate. So what we would see is that monies have to be spent for these roads to be repaved, for these roads to be repaired, and in some cases rebuilt. Now, 10 roads adds a certain degree of wealth to a country. Now, how could the building of a road infrastructure add wealth? Well, put it this way. The more roads in a country, the less traffic. The less time workers have to take getting from home and to work. The less time that firms would take to deliver their products from their business to their consumers. So we all know the saying that time is money, and therefore the faster people get to work, the faster that firms can deliver to their customers, the greater the level of productivity and the greater the level of output. So we realize the building of road and strong infrastructure within a country can add value and output and wealth to an economy. So 10 roads will add a certain degree of wealth. But if these roads have to be repaved, it's not really adding more wealth because it's the same existing number of roads. However, monies are being spent. Money has to be spent to repave the roads. So what do? Well, what happens is that the monies spent to repave, rebuild, and repair will be included in what is known as depreciation. And therefore, we can account for the money that is spent, but we recognize that that does not add any true wealth to the country. So when we talk about gross domestic product or gross national product, all monies that are spent to repair and rebuild, not just roads, it could be buildings, whatever national infrastructure that exists in your country. Okay, if there's a natural disaster, it could lead to the destruction of buildings and other infrastructure within the country. And therefore, to rebuild what was previously there, again, it doesn't really add new wealth, but it is reinstating the wealth that existed before. So these monies have to be accounted for, and they are included in depreciation. And therefore, gross domestic product and gross national product includes in its tally all monies spent to rebuild, repair, and maintain assets of a country. Now, if you want to know the true wealth of a country, you would want to remove depreciation. You would want to account for it. You would want to make allowances for it. So therefore, gross domestic product, when you take out all monies spent on depreciation, when you take it out, what you would have therefore is no longer gross domestic product, but net domestic product. Similarly, for gross national product, when you take out monies spent on depreciation expense, what you would move is from gross national product to now net national product. And the term national income, what it is, it's simply the amount of wealth, new wealth or true wealth of a nation. That's what national income is about. So saying again, when you have GDP and you minus depreciation, you get NDP. And when you have GNP and you minus depreciation, you have NNP. And national income, the national income of a country, which is the new wealth created by that country, is approximately equal to NNP. Because if you follow the logical progression, GDP looks at value of all output in that country. When you move from GDP to GNP, you are taking out the total value of goods produced by foreigners from that equation, but you're adding the money created by your nationals who are abroad. So now you have the value of output by your nationals locally plus the value of your output by your nationals operating abroad. Then you're taking away money that is spent to rebuild and repair and maintain. That is called depreciation. So you move from GDP to GNP, and when you minus that money called depreciation, you get NNP. So you realize that net national product is a very close approximation to giving us information about the true wealth of a country, because it takes out the wealth created by foreigners and it adds in the wealth created by your nationals abroad, and then you take out money spent on depreciation. So NNP is the closest approximation to your national income. When we want to move from gross national product, or rather from gross domestic product to gross national product, what we do is we have the value of GDP and we minus all the income that was created by firms located physically in a country. So I'm going to repeat. Right now, what I'm going to attempt to do is show you a calculation of how you can calculate gross national product when you have some information about what gross domestic product is. Remember, gross domestic product refers to the value of goods and services produced physically in that country, whether it's produced by foreigners or by the nationals. That's what gross domestic product looks at. But gross national product looks at the value of output created by nationals of that particular country, whether they are located physically in their national country or abroad in a foreign country. So what we want to do, if we want to move from GDP to GNP, what we will have to do is take out the monies that are generated by foreign countries operating in that particular country. So if we are trying to calculate GNP for Trinidad and Tobago, we have to minus what is known as the property income going abroad. That property income going abroad refers to all monies generated by foreign countries operating locally in Trinidad and Tobago. But then we want to add all monies that are generated by our nationals that are located in a foreign soil. So we're going to add that, and it's termed property income coming from abroad. So therefore, GNP is equal to GDP minus property income going abroad plus property income from abroad. Now, this is a very long calculation. Minus property income going abroad plus property income coming from abroad. So what we want to do is that we can find the difference between it. So the difference between property income going abroad and property income from abroad is equal to net. Net property income from abroad. Therefore, GNP is equal to GDP plus net property income from abroad. Now, let's work out an actual calculation. Let's see this in action. So here I have a table, right? And it's providing information, just abstract information about local and foreign firms in Trinidad and Tobago. So in the green columns, what we have is information on local firms and the value of output produced by those local firms. And in the pink columns, what we have would be information on foreign firms operating in Trinidad and Tobago and the value of their output. All right, this cell refers to the value of output. All right, so we have firm A, B, and C, national firms operating locally in Trinidad and Tobago, and firms X, Y, and Z are foreign firms operating locally in Trinidad and Tobago. So if we want to calculate for GDP of Trinidad and Tobago, remember GDP refers to the value of output produced physically in that country. So we're going to tally the output of all these firms, whether they are local or foreign. So it's going to be 500 plus 1,000 plus 7 plus 2,000 plus 1,500 plus 1,000. I say again, 500 from firm A, 1,000 from firm B, 700 from firm C, 2,000 from firm X, 1,500 from firm Y, and 1,000 from firm Z. This gives us a value of $6,700. So GDP for Trinidad and Tobago would be $6,700 because it refers to the total value of all goods and services produced within the physical and maritime borders of that country. It doesn't matter if foreign firms are operating, as long as they're operating physically in Trinidad and Tobago. If we want to account for GNP, what we're going to look at would be the output produced by the nationals of the country. Now, what we have here is we have the information for local firms operating in TNT, foreign firms operating in TNT, but we have no extra information about any nationals operating in foreign soil in this particular example. So what we would have, therefore, will be the GNP for TNT will be 500 plus 1,000 plus 7, which gives us a value of 2,200. Now, there was no need to use the formula I showed you previously because the information is provided for us in this chart. But let's apply the formula to see the formula in action. So the formula says that GNP is equal to GDP plus net property income from abroad. GDP, the value of GDP is 6,700. Net property income from abroad will be the difference between the money going abroad and the money coming from abroad. The money going abroad will be the money from the foreigners operating in TNT. That will be 2,000, 1,500, and 1,000. So that will be minused, all right? That will be subtracted from And then we have to add money coming in from abroad from our nationals. As I said previously, there's no information about our nationals operating abroad in this particular example. So that will simply be minus 2,000, 1,500, and 1,000. All right, that gives us negative 4,500. And when we add money coming in from abroad, that will be adding 0. So negative 4,500 plus 0, because we have no information about money coming from abroad, that gives us a total again of negative $500. So using the formula of GNP equal to GDP plus net property income from abroad equals 6,700, which is GDP, plus net property income from abroad, which will be negative 4,500, which gives us 6,700 minus 4,500. A positive plus a negative gives us a negative, and therefore the value is 2,200. So even utilizing our formula, we get the same answer from when we tally the information straight from the table. So I hope this particular example was clear enough in showing you how to move from GDP to GNP. Okay? Now just to understand terminology, GDP, whenever you hear the term GDP, you're usually talking about GDP at market prices, GDP at current dollars, or nominal GDP. They all actually mean the same thing. So GDP, when you hear the term GDP being utilized, we are speaking about either GDP at market prices, GDP at current dollars, or nominal GDP. So please be familiar with the terms. And when you read other textbooks or you may hear someone speaking, they may use either one of these terminology. They all actually mean the same thing. And lastly, some may be curious as to why GDP is defined as the total value of all goods and services. Well, we need to denote GDP in terms of dollars and cents. Why? Well, if GDP looks at all goods and services in a country, how can you add up the tables produced by a firm? Or these chairs? What dimensions? What would be the unit of measurement? Take, for instance, Trinidad and Tobago produces oil. How would you add barrels of oil to tables, or to volumes of liquid like blue waters, or volumes of liquid such as orchard fruit juice? How can you add all of these things together? Every good, every service has a different unit of measurement. The only common denominator, the only common unit that can be used as a measurement throughout all goods and services that would allow us to tally them and get a summative figure would be dollars and cents. Money is the only common unit of measurement that we can use. Hence, GDP, GNP, NNP, NDP, national income, they are all denoted in terms of dollars and cents. And just to give you an idea of what I'm saying, how you cannot add variables with different units of measurement. If you were to add 10 centimeters to 10 millimeters, you really can't answer it unless you choose to convert to either centimeters or millimeters. The answer can never be given unless you convert it to either centimeters or millimeters. And therefore your answer would either be 11 centimeters or 110 millimeters. So therefore, we must have a common unit of measurement. And in the case of GDP, as a statistic, the common unit of measurement would be money. So I hope this particular lecture 1A, was clear. Again, you could always revisit the video, look at it how many times you desire, and any questions you may have, you can forward them to me. So stay tuned to lecture 1B, and do have a good evening or good day. Take care.